Hi QA champs, welcome back to ServiceNow interview series. Today we are going to discuss something very important for manual tester who are trying to move into ServiceNow QA automation. Many testers learn ATF, understand the basic test steps and even practice creating simple tests, but when they attend to interview, they struggle to explain real-time scenarios. So today I am going to explain 5 common mistakes manual testers make in ServiceNow ATF interviews. And more importantly, I will explain how you should answer those questions in an interview. I will show you now some real-time example so you can understand not just how ATF works but how a QA engineer should think about automation. With the mistake number 1, open incident, enter data, click submit, verify result. Then ATF test data, UI validation, server-side validation, database record validation, expected result. Click on the number one mistake is click only trap. Don't just talk about clicks. Explain record validation, server-side logic, and complex workflows. One common mistake I see the tester explain ATF exactly like they explain manual testing. For example, if the interview asks how would you automate incident creation using ATF, a manual tester might say, I open the incident form, enter the caller, enter the short description, click submit, and verify the incident is created. That's wrong, but it's not enough for automation interview. Instead, I would explain the complete validation strategy. First, I would prepare the required test data, then I would use the appropriate ATF steps to open, interact with the form. I would populate the required field, then I would submit the record. But I would not stop there. I would validate that incident was actually created correctly. I may validate the incident number, state, assignment group, priority, or other expected value. If there is a server-side logic involved, I would also validate resulting record rather than relying only on what is displayed on the screen. So remember, don't explain only the clicks, explain the validation. The general what we say when you're going to explain the validation of catalog form, first you understand the catalog form workflow manually, then you go with the test data preparation, then what you need to validate and what the values you need to validate and what are the mandatory fields, those things you need to understand first, and then after that you directly go and you can directly validate those forms, and you can add in the steps in the ATF. So it would be better to mistake number two, scripting phobia. Understand basic JavaScript and run server-side script in ATF. You don't have to become a full-time ServiceNow developer, but you should understand what server-side script is doing and when you might need it. It is an ATF test. Giving an example. For example, suppose I create an incident through my ATF test. The UI shows the incident was created successfully, but also wanted to verify something at the database or server level. In that situation, server-side validation can help me before the actual record. Example in JavaScript, variable incident is equal to new glide record incident dot add query number. This small scripting. The important thing for an interview is not memorizing this exact script. The interviewer wants to know whether you understand the difference between client side and server side validation and whether you know when server is logic can help. Suppose if the interview asks, do you know JavaScript? Don't simply say yes or no. Explain what you all have actually used. For example, glide record, basic scripting, or server-side validation in ATF. Mistake number three, missing the why. Explain why you choose automation, not just how to create the test. The third mistake is probably one of the most important, knowing how to use ATF, but not knowing why you are using it. It is like how you create a test, add step, and run test. Why? The purpose of automation mainly is regression purpose, business critical flow, repeated execution, faster validation, and reduce manual effort. When someone is asking what is the use of automation, why you require automation, in that case, you can directly answer these points. Regression testing, business critical flow, repeated execution, faster validation, reduce manual effort. Explain. Suppose an interviewer asks, why did you automate this particular scenario? In that case, don't say like because you have a ATF is available. Not, it's not a strong answer. You would say we selected the scenario because it was executed frequently during regression testing, involved multiple validation, and was important to business. Automating it helped us execute same validation consistently and reduce repetitive manual effort. There's the difference between knowing the tool and thinking like an automation QA engineer. But four, two simple scenarios. Talk about approvals catalog. Don't just say like simple scenarios. I have done with automation like this kind of. Just talk about approvals catalog it a multiple user and real project scenarios, multiple approvals scenarios. Those things had more value to the your answer. This is where many candidates lose points in experience at level interviews. They only talk about very basic scenarios. What is basic? Login, open incident, enter description, submit. This is the basic testing. The real time they're expecting catalog request, RATM, parallel task, approval, assignment group, task closure, RATM closure, request closure, multiple approvals, multiple workflows. That is what they're expecting. For a 3 plus or 4 plus years in QA role, the interview may expect you to discuss more complex scenarios. For example, let's take a service catalog request. Real-time ATF scenario. Show this flow will be request submitted, RAQ created, RATM created, three parallel tasks, group approval, approval, additional task, task close, RATM close, request close. You just explain like imagine a catalog request is submitted. After submission, request is created, then RATM is generated. Three tasks are created in parallel. Assignment groups are for these tasks comes from the service offering support group. Once the tasks are created, the request goes to a group approval. After approval, another task is generated. Third task is assigned to the same group. Once the task is completed and closed, the RATM and request eventually move to the close state. How if they are asking for negative scenario, this is where you can make your answer much more valuable. Scenario 1, task is closed incomplete. Now let's look at a negative scenario. What happens when if the task is closed incomplete? Task state is equal to close incomplete, then does that RTM remain open? If we get the task close state is close incomplete, then you need to validate, does the RTM remains open? Does the request remain open? Does the workflow generate another task? Does the approval process change? Scenario 2, task closure skipped. Another negative scenario is where the task is marked close skipped. In that case, you have to validate task state, RTM state, request state, and workflow behavior. In third scenario, approval rejected. Now let's test another important scenario, approval rejection. Suppose the flow will be like request approval reject. In that case, approval rejected, expected task behavior, and RTM state and request state. These negative scenarios are extremely important in an interviews because they demonstrate that you are not only testing the happy path, you are thinking about failure condition and downstream impact, and also how you analyze the failure, and how you try to fix that particular error in the automation. Number 5, debugging blindness. You know how to investigate failures, logs, screenshots, client errors, and test data. The fifth mistake is not only knowing how to troubleshoot a failed test, ATF test. To find the root cause. In the first step, you first open the test result and review the failed step. How you do the root cause? Root cause is the main expected during the interview. How you root cause that particular error? How you root cause that particular issue when the ATF is failed? First, you go with the first open the test result and review the failed steps. Check the screenshot and attachments where available. Look at the client side errors if failures is related to UI behavior. Next, check system. If if the UI looks correct, investigate server side logic. Next, check system logs, business rules, script, and test data. A failed ATF step is a symptom. It is not necessarily the root cause. The- when you are doing a root cause for that, when you are explaining the root cause, you need to explain the step-by-step scenario how you root cause that particular issue error when you are getting doing automation. Which one is now it is your turn. Which one is holding you back? Comment below. Follow for more service now QA interview tips. Now I would ask you a few questions, answer or comment in the comment section. How you add to automate? How you automate a service catalog request using ATF? How would you validate multiple tasks generated from one RATM? How would you validate an approval in ATF? What would you do if an ATF test suddenly failed? What negative scenarios would you cover for a service workflow? If you are preparing for a ServiceNow QA interview, don't just memorize ATF steps. Practice explaining the complete business scenario, validations, negative scenarios, and troubleshooting approach. If this video helped you understand how to approach ATF interview scenarios, please like the video and subscribe to ServiceNow Tester interview series. And if you want me to create a more real-time ATF scenarios like this, comment ATF below. I will see you in the next video. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep growing. If you are looking for mock interview, if you are looking for mock interview support, please send an email request. All the details in the description. Thank you.